Have you ever wondered why some women disappear from a man's life, yet remain embedded in his mind like a splinter he can never pull out? Not because she said something dramatic, not because she made a scene, but precisely because she didn't. Because her presence was quiet power, not loud, but impossible to ignore. She understood something most never do, that mystery, when laced with dignity, can echo louder than words. That restraint isn't weakness, it's command. This kind of woman doesn't chase, explain, or beg to be seen. She simply exists, wholly, intensely, and with a stillness that unravels him. And when she's gone, she leaves no closure, no justification, only silence. Silence that bites harder than anger ever could. Men don't forget her because she left. They can't forget her because of how she left in a world that teaches women to perform, to over-explain, to please. She does the opposite. She disrupts the script. And when a man stumbles into her presence, it's not her beauty that haunts him. It's her energy. It's an energy that can't be faked. She's not interested in being understood quickly because she knows the most. Powerful things in life are rarely understood on first glance. This is the essence of Machiavellian femininity, not manipulation in the shallow sense, but psychological command, a deep knowing of when to be visible and when to vanish. She moves like the moon, subtle, yet governing tides without ever touching the ocean. To the average man, this kind of woman is unsettling because she doesn't try to make him feel needed. She doesn't flatter his ego, she reflects it. And when a woman reflects a man's ego back to him, unbothered, unaffected, uninterested, it's not rejection he feels, it's exposure. He starts to question himself, his power, his worth, his control. You see, most men walk through the world feeling powerful because they are constantly affirmed. But she interrupts that affirmation, not with cruelty, but with indifference. And that is far more terrifying. It's one thing to be hated, it's another to be unbothered. And she knows this. She knows that being silent at the right moment is more psychologically arresting than 1,000 clever words. She knows that holding back can create a deeper craving than giving in. This woman doesn't do this out of insecurity or coldness. No, she is Machiavellian in the highest sense, not because she wants to destroy him, but because she knows who she is and refuses to collapse herself into who he wants her to be. She's done the shadow work. She's faced her own darkness. She no longer needs a man to rescue her, and that makes her intoxicating because she's not a fantasy. She's a mirror, and mirrors never lie. He may chase her body at first, but what lingers? What torments him long after the chase has ended? Key is her soul, the way she carried herself, the way she withheld approval, the way she made him feel. Not dominant, but observed. She had presence, the kind of presence that walks into a room without performing, the kind of presence that reminds him of everything he's not yet become. Ain't when she's gone. He doesn't remember the conversations. He remembers the absence. That's the difference between attraction and haunting. One fades with time. The other deepens in memory. And she doesn't need to be told this. She knows. She's cultivated that power. She's studied the ancient codes, not in books, but in heartbreak, in solitude, in silence. She's learned to master herself. And once a woman masters herself, a man can never quite master her. That is what burns into his psyche. Not her looks, not her warmth, but her unreachability. She is both flame and ice, burning when present, cold when gone. He never knows which version of himself she will reveal. And so he obsesses, not with her, but with what he becomes in her presence. He doesn't realize it, but she's teaching him. It's forcing him to confront his projections, his need for control, his fragile masculinity that needs to conquer in order to feel complete. But she will not be conquered, and deep down respects her for it, even if it infuriates him, even if it breaks him, because some women are written in ink, and others and fire. But fire doesn't ask permission to burn. It consumes what is ready and leaves behind only what is real. He remembers her, not just for who she was, but for what she awakened in him, or more accurately, what she exposed. The unhealed boy, the performer, the one who mistook validation for love and dominance for desire. She saw through it all, not because she judged him, but because she had once lived it and transcended it. This kind of woman, Machiavellian in her psychological depth, does not waste energy on superficial conquest. She doesn't flirt to be chosen. She doesn't perform to be liked. She studies, observes, waits, like a strategist, in velvet, cloaked in patience, reading the soul of the man in front of her with frightening precision. While other women ask, does he like me? She wonders, what does he seek in me? What part of himself is he hoping I'll complete? And when she realizes he's not seeking to know her, but to use her as a balm for his unhealed wounds, she withdraws, not in anger, in elegance, in silence. She doesn't slam the door. She doesn't leave a trail of drama. She simply vanishes like mist at dawn, and in doing so, becomes unforgettable, because now he is left to wander the halls of his mind, looking for the pieces she took, not realizing those pieces were never hers to carry, though were his own abandoned shadows, reflected back to him through her gaze. And when she disappeared, so did the mirror. Now, he is alone again, but this time without illusion, and that haunts him, not because she punished him, but because she never gave him the satisfaction of being the villain or the victim. She denied him the narrative. And a man without a narrative is a man at war with himself. She represents the rarest kind of feminine power, not the seductive bait of false surrender, but the magnetic pool of authentic self-possession. And it's not loud, it's not needy. It doesn't scream, look at me. It just is, like a mountain, unmoved by weather, admired by those who pass, but climbed only by the worthy. You see, what truly disturbs a man is not a woman who fights him, but a woman who simply doesn't need to. A woman who knows when to withdraw, when to go quiet, when to choose herself over emotional theatrics. That restraint is what leaves him spinning, because he expected reaction. He expected to win. Instead, he was met with stillness, and nothing unsettles the ego like a mirror that doesn't move. In that silence, he's left with the questions she never answered, the doors she never opened, the meaning behind every look, every pause, every moment of still presence that seemed to stretch endlessly in time. Did she love him? Was she testing him? Did she see right through him? She doesn't answer those questions, and she never will, not because she wants power over him, but because she has something far more terrifying to a man: power over herself. And that is the wound. That is the splinter he cannot pull out, not because it hurts, but because it reveals how easily he was undone by a woman who never raised. Her voice never played the fool, never begged to be understood. She taught him without teaching. She led him without leading. She broke him not through cruelty, but through clarity. Clarity that said, you may desire me, you may even love me, but you do not own me, and I do not owe you my softness just because you find me rare. She knew the rules of power, not because she read them in a book, but because she had suffered enough to master them. She had become the queen in her own chess game, not the pawn in someone else's. And when a woman becomes this, sovereign, undisturbed, precise, she becomes not just memorable, but unforgettable. The kind of unforgettable that lingers in dreams, the kind that echoes in the silence between relationships, the kind that makes future lovers feel like shadows of a ghost he can never fully name. She is the shadow behind every perfect woman he meets, not because she was perfect, but because she was real in a way that no performance could imitate. She had boundaries like steel wrapped in silk. She didn't explain them, didn't apologize for them. She simply was them, a man could feel it in her posture, in her tone, in the way she never competed for space. Because she owned it. There was no desperation in her eyes, no hunger for his validation, his presence, and the subtle, unnerving feeling that he was the one being weighed, not the other way around. Most women, taught by a world that fears their depth, shrink to make a man comfortable, but not her. She expanded, quietly, boldly, without flinching. And when a man tried to box her in, she didn't argue. She vanished. That's the feminine Machiavelli knew. Not loud rebellion, but silent strategy. Not chaos, but containment. He understood that power isn't in the noise, it's in what isn't said. The decisions made in silence, the truths felt but never declared. She embodied this, not as a tactic, but as a truth. And so she lives in the back of his mind. It's like a riddle he keeps trying to solve. Not to possess her, but to possess the feeling she gave him. The feeling of being exposed, dismantled, and reassembled. All without her ever touching him, because her power wasn't in seduction. It was in revelation. She revealed the gap between the man he thought he was, and the man he actually was. And that gap, once revealed, never goes away. He may go on to love again, to marry, to build a life, but there will always be that sliver of memory, her voice in a moment of stillness, her silence after his neediness, the way she looked at him like she already knew the ending, because she did. She knew that some men don't want a woman. They want a mirror, something to reflect back only what flatters them. But she was not built for that. She was forged in fire. She had met her own darkness and survived it, so she didn't reflect his ego. She reflected his shadow, and the shadow, once seen, can never be unseen. She could have softened herself. She could have played the game, but that would have made her forgettable, and she was never meant for that. She was meant to haunt, not as a ghost, but as a standard for what it feels like to meet a woman who doesn't need you, but chooses you, who doesn't flatter you, but challenges you, who doesn't fold, but holds herself, her power, her silence. He will measure others by her, not consciously, not with malice, but in moments of frustration, in flashes of longing, he'll feel her again. And the woman who gives to Isley, and the one who never asks anything of him, and the one who stays even when he disrespects her. He'll feel the lack and remember what it was to be in the presence of a woman who never stayed for anything less than truth. And so she echoes in his memory, in his mistakes, in his growth. He may not thank her. He may never reach out, but she will have changed him, because true power doesn't always leave scars. Sometimes it leaves silence, and in that silence, a man learns, not through lectures, not through consequences, but through absence. Her absence was her final move, and it was the most devastating of all. Man can't outrun the kind of absence that feels like a mirror disappearing mid-reflection. He doesn't just miss her, he misses who he almost became in her presence, because she didn't demand his transformation. She inspired it, quietly, relentlessly. She held herself to a standard that forced him to confront the gap between his potential and his performance. And that kind of woman, she isn't just remembered. She's relived again and again, the silent ache that follows mediocrity. He can kiss new lips, touch new skin, feel new warmth, but nothing quite burns like the woman who never begged to be seen. The one who watched instead of chased. The one who withdrew instead of pleaded. She didn't need closure, She was closure because her absence forced him to open the door he had always locked. You see, the Machiavellian woman does not just haunt a man, she reshapes him, not out of revenge, not for sport, but because her very existence is a contradiction to his illusions. She is what happens when feminine energy matures, when softness hardens into self-respect, when the little girl inside grows, teeth, spine, and sovereign clarity. She does not lead with her pain, but with her peace. And that peace is what devastates him most, because peace like hers can't be bought, can't be manipulated, can't be owned. It's earned by walking through fire, by choosing solitude over self-abandonment. It's by no longer shrinking for love that comes with conditions. She knew that every time she stayed past her intuition, she trained him to devalue her. So she left, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. And in doing so, she did what most never do. She taught him the cost of a woman who walks away whole. That's why she's unforgettable. Because men are used to women who stay, who would explain, who hurt out loud, who negotiate with their own worth in hopes of being chosen. But she did none of that. She left the negotiation table, and in that moment, she became the price he can no longer afford. It's not cruelty, it's calibration. She calibrated herself to a frequency only a man with depth, with discipline, with devotion could tune into. And once she did that, she stopped answering to potential. She began responding only to presence. She doesn't need perfection, but she does require truth. And most men, T's, aren't ready to give it. They want a woman who reflects their fantasy, not their fracture. But she will not play that part. She will not be the salve to wounds they refuse to acknowledge. She will not absorb their confusion and call it compassion. She has walked too long with herself to pretend she doesn't see the difference between charm and character. So when she speaks, it is precise. When she touches, it is intentional. And when she disappears, it's absolute. In that final silence, the one that leaves no door open, no crack to crawl back through, that is what pierces deepest, because it tells him, you were never in control here. You were simply invited into my world, briefly, and now he stands on the outside, remembering not just her laugh, not her scent, but the feeling of being near someone who demanded nothing, yet changed everything. He'll replay it in the car, in bed, in moments when life grows too quiet. Presence will rise up like smoke, invisible, but undeniable, because she didn't break his heart. She revealed it. And once a man sees the shape of his own heart, its cracks, its emptiness, its longing for more, he can never unsee it. He can pretend, he can distract, but he can't go back. And that is her legacy, not in what she gave, not in what she took, but in what she awakened. And then left him alone to face. Some men will spend their entire lives trying to recreate the feeling she gave them, not even knowing what it was, because it wasn't love in the traditional sense. It wasn't validation, comfort, or attention. It was something much rarer, recognition. She didn't see his mask, she saw the man behind it. Not the version he projected, but the one hiding in his silence, the one buried beneath layers of bravado and approval-seeking. She looked into the soul he barely acknowledged himself and recognized it. And that is what haunts him, because most people in this world love the costume, not the actor. They fall for performance, not essence. But she never clapped for his act. She waited for the curtain to fall. And when it did, she didn't flinch. She didn't run. Taya, she simply saw. And that terrified him more than any rejection ever could. For the first time, he was naked, not physically, but emotionally, seen without flattery, met without fear, and that kind of presence is rare. It disorients the man who is used to being admired but never understood. She didn't just make him feel wanted, she made him feel real. And realness is terrifying to the man who doesn't know who he is without applause. But here's the tragedy. When a woman like this gives a man a glimpse of his higher self, he often mistakes it for a magic, not realizing she only mirrored what was already inside him. And when she walks away, he believes he's lost her. But what he's truly lost is himself, because without her, the illusion returns. The mask fits again. The applause resumes. But none of it feels the same. It's hollow now. Echoes instead of connection. Smoke instead of flame. That is the curse of the man who was once held by a woman who saw him. He may not even be able to articulate what he's missing, but every new connection feels thin. Every new touch lacks depth. He looks into new eyes and sees nothing reflected back, because she didn't love him to keep him. She loved him to wake him. And once a man is awake, even halfway, the dream no longer satisfies. She gave him no closure, no final scene, no last words to stitch into memory. Space heavy, still, absolute. And in that space, he encountered himself, not the strong version, not the charming one, the raw one, the longing one, the boy, the man, the ghost. And so he searches, not for her, but for the feeling, the clarity, the mirror, the standard, the truth. But she cannot be replaced because she was never trying to be possessed in the first place. She was not there to belong. She was there to remind him of what love feels like when it comes with no script, no desperation, no need to perform. What power feels like when it's not about dominance, but about discernment. What the feminine feels like when it is. Hold dot and now. In her absence, he learns, not quickly, not comfortably, but slowly, brutally, through contrast, through ache, through emptiness that no new woman can seem to fill, because she wasn't filling a void. She was pointing to one, and when a man realizes that, truly realizes it, the transformation begins, the journey inward, the reckoning with self, the awakening to depth. Some will run from it, some will numb it, but the few, the brave, will rise through it, and if he does, he sheds the false skin, burns the mask, and confronts the silence she left behind. He may one day thank her, not with words, but with being, with becoming, because that's all she ever wanted. Not to be worshipped, not to be owned, but to be understood, and in understanding her, to understand oneself. And when a man finally does that, not out of fear, but out of freedom, he will stop chasing her shadow, because he will have found what she saw all along, himself. And when that moment arrives, if it arrives, he will feel the silence differently, not as a punishment, but as a prophecy fulfilled. She was never there to complete him. She was there to disrupt him, to destroy the illusion that completion comes from anything but within. Her vanishing was not abandonment, it was initiation. She didn't break him, she unlocked him, because every man must meet the woman he cannot possess to understand the one thing he must learn to master, himself. She was not an ending, she was a door, a test, a symbol, a sacred wound, annulment. She left does not bleed, it reveals. It peels back the layers of ego, strips away the armor of false pride. Kana forces the man to stare, unblinking, at his own incompletion. And still, she offers him nothing. No hand to hold, no final answer. That is her gift, her cruel mercy, because she knows if he does the work, if he rises, if he reaches that place where a man no longer needs to conquer, but instead chooses to serve something higher, she will no longer haunt him. She will bless him, not by returning, but by transforming. For the woman who once unsettled him becomes, in his evolution, the foundation upon which he rebuilds his soul. He does not become powerful by chasing her. He becomes powerful by becoming the man who could hold her and still let her fly. And she's not waiting. The Machiavellian woman, the woman who haunts without trying, who commands without words, who loves without attachment. She doesn't linger in memories. She evolves, she sharpens, she ascends. She doesn't sit in rooms, hoping to be chosen. She builds temples out of solitude. She writes her legacy not in diaries, but in the psyches of the men who once tried to own what could only be honored. And when she walks, truly walks, it is not away. It is through every version of herself that tried to love by shrinking, through every heartbreak that asked her to dim through every temptation to explain her magic to those unequipped to understand it. She has transcended that. Now she walks not to be seen, but to see, to witness life from the high ground of self-worth, to choose not who is strongest, richest, loudest, but who is most conscious. Because a woman like her no longer wants a king who seeks a throne. She wants a monk with fire in his eyes, a man who has suffered enough to be humble and healed enough to be present, a man who won't ask her to kneel, but to rise beside him. And until such a man stands before her, whole and unshaken, she waits for no one, not out of pride, but out of unstight, but out of peace. The peace that comes when a woman no longer fears being alone. The peace that comes from choosing solitude over betrayal, silence over performance, legacy over longing. And so, she becomes legend, not in fairy tales, but in the silent grief of men who touched her, never found her again, because she was never just a woman. She was a threshold, and only those who dare to lose, themselves, ever reach the other side. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.